Welcome, dreamers, to the realm where time drifts like mist over forgotten lands. Tonight, we descend into the heart of the Indonesian archipelago, to the island of Flores, where shadows of a tiny people once moved among stone in silence. They were not legends, nor echoes of myth, but real, breathing beings whose presence lingers like a whisper through ancient limestone caves. They are known as Homo Floresiensis, the hobbits of a lost world, a people no taller than a child, yet who lived with a wisdom and mystery beyond our reach. Their bones tell stories, and their silence sings of things we may never fully understand. Before we embark on this journey through time's deep currents, if these ancient whispers resonate with your soul, let your presence be known through a gentle light, and join our circle of dreamers by subscribing to continue these nightly journeys into history's hidden realms. Share with us, fellow dreamers, from which corner of the world you're joining tonight's contemplation. Let the global community of history's mysteries connect across time zones as we drift together into the past. Close your eyes now, and breathe in the scent of ancient earth. Let your thoughts quiet, and allow the past to awaken once more. Tonight we walk among hobbits, not of fantasy, but of history's forgotten dawn, in the heart of the Indonesian archipelago, where ocean winds kiss dense emerald forests and time slows to a breath. There lies an island cradled in the arms of the sea. Flores, a place of quiet majesty, where the canopy hums with the rustling lives of unseen birds, and the earth itself holds secrets wrapped in layers of stone and memory. Here, under the watchful boughs of ancient banyan trees, and beside the gurgling of unseen mountain streams, our story begins not in a palace or ruin, but in a cave. It is called Liang Bua, a limestone chamber, cool and still, carved by the slow patience of dripping water and crumbling stone. The cave does not announce itself. It waits. Moss grows thick along its mouth, and ferns lean gently across its threshold like guardians of forgotten lore. To enter is to descend not just into the earth, but into a time long buried beneath modern knowing. The year was 2003, when the modern world, full of electric noise and concrete certainty, met this quiet cavern. A team of archaeologists, guided by curiosity and whispers from the local people, came seeking signs of early humanity. What they found would unravel everything we thought we knew about our species, and awaken a mystery that had slumbered for tens of thousands of years. A single skull, small, delicate, like that of a child, but not a child. The teeth were worn. The sutures in the bone told of age. This was an adult, yet barely a meter tall. Not a dwarf, not a disease, something entirely other. They named her LB1. Later, she would be called the Lady of Flores, but her presence stirred more than just scientific interest. It felt like the cave had spoken, like a story was ready to unfold not in words, but in bones, soil, and silence. Imagine the dim light filtering through that cave mouth, dust floating like ancient thoughts in shafts of gold, the quiet of the space, broken only by the distant drip of water on stone. This was no ordinary discovery. This was the opening of a chapter long erased. The island of Flores had long been a cradle of uniqueness. Isolated from the mainland by deep, rushing waters and strong ocean currents, it evolved at its own tempo. Animals grew smaller here, a phenomenon known as island dwarfism. Elephants the size of cows once roamed these forests, their footprints soft in the volcanic earth. Giant storks walked the riverbanks. Komodo dragons slithered through the underbrush. It was a world suspended between myth and biology. And into this world came the hobbits, Homo, a species distinct from us. Not quite our ancestors, not our descendants, a cousin, perhaps. A parallel. They walked upright. They crafted stone tools. They hunted, likely gathered, maybe even told stories of their own beneath the stars. But their heads were tiny, a third the size of ours. How could such a small brain perform such acts of precision and will? How could such a creature stand alongside us in the long procession of humankind? The scientists questioned, measured, scanned. Was this a deformed human pathology? Could it be But no. The more they studied, the more the bones whispered truth. This was not illness. This was identity. A separate people, a separate path. And so the mystery deepened, not just who they were, but why they vanished. They had survived here, in this cave and perhaps others like it, for tens of thousands of years, until, without warning, they disappeared. No burial, no grave goods, no signs of violence, only absence. What becomes of a people who leave behind no language, no legend, no lore, only the shapes of their bones and the shape of the tools they left behind? In the villages near Liang Bua, elders speak of the Abu, hairy people who once lived in the mountains and stole food at night. Mischievous, secretive, clever. Some say they could mimic human speech, others that they vanished into the forest when the world changed. Could these stories be echoes? Could memory carry the shape of truth across so many generations? To understand Homo Floresiensis is to listen not only with ears, but with a quiet heart, for they speak not in sentences, but in presence. In the curve of a femur, the chipped edge of a stone knife, the ashes of ancient. Picture them now, moving through the dawn mist of Flores, their bare feet brushing soft volcanic ash, their eyes bright with the instinct of survival. Perhaps they climbed trees with ease, navigating vines and branches like dancers. Perhaps they watched the stars from hilltops, wondering as we do. The world they knew was older than cities, older than pyramids, a world untouched by empire. They did not know conquest. They knew stone fire, leaf water. When we call them hobbits, it is not to diminish, but to wonder, to conjure the magic of smallness, of grace in silence, of power in fragility. For in their tiny skulls lay a mind that made tools sharp enough to skin an animal, a hand precise enough to chip volcanic rock with care, a spirit patient enough to endure an island's shifting moods. The cave speaks still. New layers are being uncovered. Charcoal flecks, the burned remains of ancient meals, bones of animals, cracked and gnawed, tools shaped with intention. There is life in that stillness, and in every echo of that cave, a breath of something sacred. The island watches, trees sway, the winds, still carrying ancient seeds and stories, whisper along cliff edges. And beneath it all, the footprints of a vanished people lie undisturbed, waiting not to be claimed, but remembered. Let us pause here, in reverence. For the world once cradled a people who remind us that size is no measure of wonder, and that some mysteries are more beautiful unanswered. Dream now of misty hills and fern-shadowed paths, of hobbit feet brushing leaves, of a people whose voices we may never hear, but whose presence lingers. Just beyond the veil of time, beneath the dense canopy of Flores, the air carries the perfume of damp stone and ancient leaf. Each breath drawn on this island seems touched by age, by the weight of millennia pressing softly against the present. Here in the highlands, near Liangbua, the land swells and folds like a sleeping beast, its back dotted with the scars of volcanoes. It is a land shaped by fire and time, and it is here that the whispers of Homo Floresiensis linger most. To know these hobbits, one must first know the land that birthed them. Flores is not a gentle place. The terrain undulates in crags and valleys. Rivers carve deep furrows through the basalt bones of the island. Earthquakes tremble beneath moss-covered stones. Volcanoes loom in the distance, their slopes wreathed in mist like slumbering gods. Yet it is from this volatile cradle that life has blossomed into the strange and the singular. On Flores, nature wrote a different story. The rules we know on the mainland do not apply here. This is a realm of exceptions, of altered proportions, of lives lived in miniature. And in this deviation from the expected, beauty emerges. It is here, among the igneous cliffs and steaming earth, that the tiny ancestors of elephants, no larger than donkeys, they passed like spirits through the underbrush, their footprints softly pressed into the ash. The hobbits hunted these creatures, perhaps with traps, perhaps with teamwork. The bones found near their hearths tell us they were not passive observers of their world, but participants engaged, aware, capable. The presence of fire is another whisper. Charcoal embedded in the cave floors tells of flames carefully not wildfires, but controlled heat. A gathering place, a circle of light in the vast prehistoric night. Around these flames, perhaps they cooked meat, perhaps they told stories, if not with words as we know them, then with gestures, glances, the rhythm of shared breath. And in the glint of their stone tools, flakes of chert and volcanic glass, we see intention. These were not crude implements, but sharpened expressions of thought, crafted with care. They reflect minds that understood not only survival, but improvement. A cut must be clean, a grip must be sure. Such tools require patience, repetition, memory. And memory, even in silence, is the beginning of culture. But why did these people grow so small? Why, in a world where height and size often confer advantage, did Homo flourish? The answer lies within the quiet mechanics of on islands, where resources are scarce and predators few, creatures shrink. It is nature's soft reshaping, a conservation of energy. Smaller bodies require less food, move through forests, more easily survive with less. The island molds its inhabitants like clay over centuries, over thousands of years. The body answers the land. But the mystery does not end at biology. For these hobbits did not simply shrink from their ancestors. Radically, their bodies, though similar in some ways to early Homo erectus, were different enough to demand reconsideration. The shape of the wrists, the curve of the feet, the angle of the shoulders. It was as if the island had not only shaped their size but sculpted a new kind of human. And how long did they live here? Unseen, unknown. The sediments speak softly, but with certainty. Homo Floresiensis walked this land from at least 100,000 years ago, possibly much longer. They lived through the rising and falling of sea levels, through the birth and death of rivers, through the rumblings of volcanoes that spat ash across the sun. And through it all, they endured. Endurance is its own kind of brilliance. Not the brilliance of invention or conquest, but the brilliance of harmony. These small people did not dominate the island. They danced with it, moved with its rhythms. They did not build cities, but they left their marks small and silent, yet lasting. Perhaps they carved paths through the jungle, known only to them. Perhaps they knew the stars above as intimately as the stones beneath. Perhaps they held rituals we will never decipher, in clearings now reclaimed by fern and vine. The caves they chose were not random. Liang Bua, with its cool breath and high ceiling, provided shelter not just from rain and beast, but from time itself. Within its walls, they created a world, and when we walk there today, we do not merely intrude, we enter a chamber of memory. Yet there is a sorrow in this memory, for they are gone. The layers above their bones grow quiet. No signs of them beyond 50,000 years ago. The tools cease. The charcoal stops. The silence falls like mist over the cave floor. Why? Was it climate changed as swift, too harsh? Did new predators arrive, beasts? Or perhaps men? Or do they simply fade, as so many do, when the world no longer holds space for their rhythm? Some believe modern humans arrived on Flores around the same time the hobbits vanished. Our ancestors, taller, broader, louder. Did we drive them to extinction, as we have done with so many? Or did something subtler occur, a slow vanishing, not of violence, but of a slower step drowned beneath a faster one? We may never know, but the quiet of their ending haunts us. It reminds us that history is not a straight line. It is a web of lost chances, forgotten kin, alternate paths never taken. In a world that now reveres noise and speed, the hobbits of Flores invite us to consider another way, a way of listening to the earth, not bending it. They are not here to be pitied or romanticized. They are here to be remembered. For in their bones lies a question that echoes through every jungle path and lava ridge. What does it mean to be human? Is it size, intelligence, culture, or is it something quieter? The warmth of shared fire, the care of crafting tools, the gaze lifted to the stars in silent wonder. These are human, and so were they. Tonight, as you drift into rest, imagine the island in twilight, the last rays of sun glancing off volcanic stone. A small figure moves among the trees, quick, sure, vanishing before you can turn. Was it wind? Was it memory? Or was it a whisper from a time when being human meant something deeper, softer, stranger? Let that mystery cradle you now, and rest, knowing that once, in a cave called Liang Bua, the earth remembered what we forgot, long before the name Homo Floresiensis ever stirred among the pages of scientific journals, and long before archaeologists turned their lanterns toward the depths of Liang Bua. There were stories, not carved in stone or painted on walls, but passed from voice to voice, like the wind passing through bamboo groves. They were stories of the Ebu in the highlands of Flores, where the jungles grow thick and the hills cradle quiet villagers. The elders remember. They speak softly, in the hush of firelight, about the little people, hairy, swift, and clever. They say the Ebu Gogo once lived among them, in caves and hidden hollows, darting out in the night to steal fruit tubers, and sometimes even cooked food from unwatched fires. Their name means something like grandmother who eats everything. Not in mockery, but in fascination. These were not ghosts or demons. They were real. Their feet left tracks. Their laughter echoed from forest edges. The stories tell of their strange way of speaking, almost human, but not quite. Like mimicry, like parrots imitating speech with a shimmer of understanding behind their eyes. According to the Tales, the Ebu Gogo were curious. They watched humans from the trees, learned by observation, and sometimes attempted to copy what they saw, lighting fires, gathering food, even wearing discarded cloth. Some villagers believed they once tried to kidnap a child, not in malice, but in confusion or longing, and then, one day, they were gone. Some stories say they retreated deep into the mountains, into caves no man has ever found. Others speak of a final act of defiance, when villagers, tired of their thievery, lured them into a trap and set fire to their last refuge. These are only stories, and yet, when the bones of LB1 were uncovered in 2003, many elders said simply, "We told you they were real." Could the Ebu Gogo be a living memory of Homo Floresiensis? Anthropologists usually dismiss the idea. The hobbits vanished from the fossil record some 50,000 years ago. Oral tradition, they argue, cannot stretch so far. But others wonder, could there have been survivors? A remnant population hidden in the mountains, persisting in isolation? Could the stories have preserved an a genetic memory, a cultural reverberation? Flores is a place where time behaves differently, where the old lingers long in the soil and the new arrives only in whispers. In such a place, perhaps memory does stretch farther than we imagine. Even in modern times, there are tales of sightings, fleeting glimpses of small, upright figures disappearing into the forest. Hunters speak of strange footprints beside streams, children whisper of nighttime voices in the trees. These stories are not loud, they are not proven, but they persist like a low drumbeat in the collective soul of the island. One cannot walk the jungle paths of Flores without feeling watched, not in fear, but in presence. The vines part and close again, as if remembering other feet, other hands. The stones underfoot are warm from more than just the sun. They hold the press of ancient souls, the weight of small beings who once ran freely through these thickets. There is power in folklore, not in its accuracy, but in its endurance. When a story survives for generations, it becomes more than a tillet, becomes a bridge between the known and the unknown, between what we can touch and what we must feel. Perhaps Homo Floresiensis has never vanished completely. Perhaps they live still in the rustle of leaves, in the shape of a shadow, in the lullaby's mother's whisper when the night grows long. Perhaps the ebu-gogo are not gone, but dreaming, waiting for the right silence to be heard again. To understand these little people is to listen not only with science, but with soul. The archaeological record gives us bones and tools, but the stories give us breath, heartbeat, meaning, and together they form a tapestry fragmented, yes, but still woven with wonder. Imagine, if you will, sitting by a fire in a mountain village. The air is cool, fragrant with wood smoke and clove. An elder sits across from you, eyes deep as the cave shadows, voice low and rhythmic. She tells you of the night she saw an ebu-gogo small and fast, with eyes like whetstone. It took a banana from the porch and vanished, leaving behind only a single footprint in the ash. She does not seek belief. She only tells. The story is not for argument, it is for remembrance. And in that moment, something stirs. A sense that perhaps history is not only what is written, but also what is whispered. That the past does not end at the edge of the fossil, but flows onward in the river of speech. The rhythm of the drum, the pulse of song. The ebu-gogo live there, in that flow. Not proven, not disproven. Just ... waiting. In the caves of Flores, no new bones have been found for many years. Yet the earth has not given up all her secrets. Deep chambers remain unexplored. Layers remain untouched. The jungle covers much time more still. But even if no further skeletons are uncovered, the mystery endures. It hums beneath the ground and in the stories of the people. It reminds us that history is not a line, but a circle. That the past is never truly past. That echoes live long in the stone. So the next time you hear a rustle in the underbrush, a tap against your window in the hush of twilight, listen, not with fear, but with wonder. The hobbits of Indonesia may be gone, or they may simply be waiting. And sometimes, all it takes is a story to bring them back into the light. Beneath the mossless hills and beneath the roots of banyan trees whose limbs stretch toward forgotten constellations, lies a cavern carved by the hush of time itself. It is known as Liang Buetha, cool cave, the dwelling of memory. Its mouth opens like a yawn from the earth, dark and unassuming, as if reluctant to reveal what sleeps inside. But it remembers. It remembers footsteps that no longer fall. It remembers voices shaped in another tongue, now lost in the folds of silence. It remembers the warmth of firelight, the soft flutters of breath in the early hours before dawn, the scraping of stone against stone as tools were shaped in rhythm with survival. Liang Bua is not merely a place. It is a witness. And like all ancient witnesses, it does not speak quickly. Its secrets unfold slowly, in layers of ash and sediment, in the careful whisper of archaeologists' brushes uncovering not just artifacts, but ghosts. Picture the cave in its prime some 50,000 years ago. Imagine the low hum of insect song outside, the distant cries of birds beyond the canopy, and the soft rustle of leaves beneath the feet of creatures long vanished from our world. The air is thick with volcanic scent and the pulse of the jungle beyond. Inside, the cool stone offers respite, a shelter from the capricious rain and the sharp eyes of predators. A small family gathers within, not tall, not towering, but upright and alert. The flicker of fire dances in their eyes as they pass stones hand to hand, chipping, shaping, perfecting. A meal roasts slowly in the embers, perhaps a forest rat, or a scrap of stegodon bone. They sit not in grandeur, but in understanding. This is their place. The island has shaped them, and they have shaped the island in return. The walls around them glisten with moisture. Shadows stretch long across the chamber, and in their silence, there is purpose. In their stillness, there is knowing. When scientists first entered this cave in the 21st century, they did not come seeking myth. They came with equipment, with notebooks, with the sharp edge of inquiry. They came to ask questions of the earth, and the earth answered, as it always does, slowly, but profoundly. What they found were not just bones, but stories. Layers of soil marked by distinct bands of color, each a chapter of volcanic eruption, of climatic shift, of life adapting to change. Stone tools lay scattered across time, embedded in ancient sediment like words embedded in parchment. Animal bones, charred and cracked, spoke of meals shared and prey pursuit. And then, the skull. LB1A being no larger than a 3-year-old child, but with teeth worn by age. Her cranial vault, strange and unexpected, smaller than expected, smaller than expected. Different in form, yet not broken, not diseased, simply different. The first reaction was disbelief. Surely this must be a modern human with a disorder, or some congenital condition, but no. The bones told a different tale. They were not malformed. They were formed with intent. They belonged to a species that had adapted, not faltered, evolved, not failed. And so Homo Floresiensis was born not in blood, but in dust and wonder. But the cave offered more than just one skeleton. Later excavations revealed fragment spots of other individuals, hints of a community, a jawbone here, a pelvis there, the suggestion of a people, not an accident. Still, the questions grew. Why Flores? Why now? Liangbua sits high in the central highlands, where the air is thin and the land falls away in gentle green folds. It is not an obvious place, not easy to find, yet it became a cradle, a home. Perhaps it was the abundance of water fresh and flowing even in dry seasons. Perhaps the shelter from the wind and the rains. Perhaps the cave, shaped by lava and erosion, offered not just protection, but communion. A place where the echoes of the island's volcanic heart could be felt, where every footstep reverberated with the memory of those who came before. And so Homo Floresiensis returned here again and again, not merely to live, but to remember. Liangbua holds within its soil the ash of distant eruptions Toba Tambora, and others whose names are now forgotten. Each layer of ash marks a moment of upheaval, a moment when the sky darkened and the air thickened. And each layer holds traces of resilience, of return. These small people survived what many could not. They endured the wrath of the earth, and they continued. It is difficult for us now, in our world of glass and speed, to understand such patience, to live for thousands of years with so little change, to walk the same forest paths generation after generation, to craft the same stone tools with careful precision, to watch the stars pass overhead and feel no urgency, only rhythm. But perhaps this is what Homo Floresiensis teaches us: not innovation, but presence, not conquest, but continuity. They did not build cities, they left no temples, but in the quiet hush of Liangbua they left something deeper, a pulse, a breath. When you walk into that cave today, you do not merely enter a hollow space, you step into memory. The air is cooler there, the light bends, sounds dampen as if swallowed by time itself. You feel not alone, but observed gently, without judgment. And if you close your eyes, you might hear them, not in speech, but in sensation. The scrape of stone against flint, the murmur of firelight flickering on damp walls, the slow rhythm of feet shuffling across ancient soil. They are gone, and yet they are here. The cave remembers, and as you drift deeper into the warmth of sleep, let the stones of Flores cradle your thoughts. Let the breath of ancient beings settle beside yours. Let the silence of Liangbua soothe the noise of modern life. For in every cave there is a story, and in this one, the hobbits of history still breathe. Far beyond the mouth of the cave, down slopes carpeted in moss and winding paths where orchids bloom and disappear like shy spirits, the jungles of Flores open into ancient valleys wide, silent, and brushed with memory. It was here, where rivers snake through stone and tree canopies knit the sky into shadow, that creatures once wandered whose scale belongs more to dreams than to the present. Giants and hobbits, not the stuff of legend but of fossil and soil, and they walked the same land. Stegodon, Florensis, Insulissa dwarf, elephant. To us, but to Homo Floresiensis it was not small. Standing shoulder-high to a tall human and weighing hundreds of kilograms, it was a giant to the tiny people who hunted it. It had once descended from ancestors of massive size, but here, on Flores, like so many others, it had shrunk. This island was not a place of expansion, it was a place of refinement, of distillation, a crucible where evolution slowed and and so these tiny humans and their miniature mammalian neighbors existed together in quiet balance. Picture it a twilight scene near a forested stream, the air thick with the scent of wet bark and flowering vines. A small group of Homo Floresiensis crouches low behind a thicket, tools in hand. Ahead the Stegodon drinks, its ears flicking. The hobbits are cautious. They do not waste energy. They know the path of the beast. They know where it steps and where it slips. Their minds work not in words but in instinct, observation, memory. A trap has been prepared, sharp stones and hidden pits. They have done this before. The earth itself holds the marks of their ancient hunts. Bones cracked, charred, discarded. The kill is not immediate. The island teaches patience, and they have learned. But it was not only Stegodons that shared the land. There were birds, giant marabou storks, long-necked, long-beaked, perhaps taller than the hobbits themselves. They would have loomed in the clearing like sentinels. There were rodents the size of cats and lizards, larger than most men. And then there were the dragons. The Komodo dragon still exists today, slithering through the dry woodlands with a tongue that tastes the air for blood. But in ancient Flores, its ancestors may have been even larger, a predator to be feared. Or perhaps, if one is brave and small enough, to survive in such a world required more than size. It required knowing when to move and when to still, knowing the shape of the land, the softness of the mud, the trembling of the leaves before something emerges. It required a connection to place so deep that it could not be written, only felt, passed from gesture to gesture, from eye to eye. And so Homo Floresiensis did not dominate. They adapted. Their tools, recovered from the darkened soil, speak not of violence but of practicality. Simple, flaked, sharp, enough to skin, to carve, to defend. There is elegance in their restraint, no excess, no ornament, only what is needed. Theirs was a world not of luxury but of precision. Yet there must have been, even in such a survivalist life, surely they looked at the stars. Surely they paused at the sound of thunder rolling down volcanic slopes. Surely they felt wonder when a stegodon calf wandered near, or when a comet streaked across the night sky. They may not have named these things, not as we do, but they would have known them, felt them, responded to them in their bones. And perhaps like us, they told stories, not with language as we know it, but through rhythm, through the pattern of stones placed in sequence, through the repetition of movement, the return to a cave, the hand over heart. These are the oldest stories, the ones that require no voice, the ones that live in gesture and breath. Even the giants would have been part of those stories. The stegodon, the dragon, the towering birds there were not just food or threat, they were symbols, beings with present. And in this way, Flores was not a wilderness. It was a stage, a sacred place where the small danced with the great, where every living thing held meaning. And then, slowly, the curtain began to fall. The bones of stegodons disappear from the sediment. The storks vanish. The dragons retreat. The hobbits grow fewer. Something changed. Perhaps it was climate, a long drought, a shifting ocean, a quake that altered the land's heartbeat. Or perhaps something came to the island, something new. Tall beings, strange voices, fires that burned too fast. Whatever it was, the balance broke. But the memory remained in the bones scattered through ash, in the tools left half-finished, in the layers of soil that grew quiet and still. And today, as we uncover these echoes, we must remember, it was not always so. There was a time, on a green island under the burning sun, when giants and hobbits walked together, when the world was slower, softer, filled with unspoken knowing. Let that image linger as you drift. Small feet in the mud beside great round prints, tiny hands reaching into the firelight, eyes bright, dark, alert, watching the jungle sway. They lived not long ago in the great calendar of Earth. And perhaps, in some forgotten corner of the island, their shadows still fall. In a world where no words have been preserved, no inscriptions etched into monument or scroll, we turn to the language that endures beyond speech. Beneath a forest canopy of Flores, scattered in the dark loam of caves and riverbed, lie the silent sentences of a vanished people. Not syllables carved by hand, but shapes shaped by survival. Stone tools are among the oldest voices of humankind. They do not speak in volume, but in intention. A chipped edge reveals thought. A symmetrical flake reveals design. A blade dulled by use reveals memory. And so we listen, not with ears, but with attention. We study the stone. The hobbits of Flores, Homo Floresiensis, crafted their tools with purpose. They were not grand. There were no bronze spears, no gold ornaments, no jewels buried beside the dead. But what they left behind was enough to carve a place in our collective past. Small hand axes, flakes of volcanic tuff, retouched along one edge, scrapers and perforators shaped for skinning or cutting, points sharp enough to pierce the hide of a These tools were their instruments of survival, and in their simplicity lies their power. Imagine the scene. A figure no taller than your waist, seated on a smooth stone near the mouth of a cave. The jungle sighs behind them. In their hand is a rock rough but promising. They strike it against another. Once, twice, the sound echoes. A flake falls. They study it. Their brow furrows. They strike again, this time at a different angle. Another flake. It is better. The tool takes shape. They do not name the process. They do not analyze. They simply feel. The rhythm is ancient. It passes from eye to hand without interruption. It is learning without classroom, craft without word, inheritance without paper. When archaeologists uncover these tools today, buried beneath thousands of years of sediment, they see patterns. They see wear on the edge that suggests slicing. They see residues, blood, plant starch, ash. They reconstruct not just the object, but the moment. A meal prepared, a hide stripped, a branch sharpened, and then they find the debris, the flakes that fell and were discarded. These are the margins of the story. Like crumpled drafts beside a writer's desk, they reveal trial and error, repetition, practice, patience. This is where we understand that Homo Floresiensis was not merely copying. They were creating. Their toolkit did not change quickly over time. For tens of thousands of years, the same types of tools reappear in layer after layer. To modernize, this may seem like stagnation, but perhaps it was balance. If something works, why alter it? We, who chase innovation like flame, often forget the beauty of constancy. There is wisdom in knowing when enough is enough. When a blade cuts clean, and a hand remembers the shape, and the stone is plentiful, what more is needed? And so, the hobbits chipped their truths into stone, not to tell stories, but to live them. Some tools are found near the remains of animals, stegodon bones, cracked open for marrow, rodents, charred by fire, birds, picked clean and left in heaps. These tools do not lie. They reveal a people in harmony with their world, not over it, but within it. And in that harmony, we find something rare, a life not spent in excess, but in understanding. Perhaps that is the lesson their stones carry forward, not how to kill or conquer, but how to endure, how to take what the land offers and offer in return, how to live so lightly that your presence vanishes, but your wisdom remains. The cave remembers, but so too does the stone, held in a museum drawer or photographed in a research paper. These tools may seem cold, analytical, but held in the hand, they warm. The fingers feel the curve, the ridge, the balance. They still fit a palm, still rest against the skin as if waiting to be used once more. And sometimes, when you hold one, you feel the echo, a pulse, a thought, a presence. You are not holding a thing. You are holding a moment, a life, a choice. These were not crude beasts. They were craftsmen, in silence, in smallness, in shadow. Their legacy is not in walls or weapons. It is in flaked stone resting quietly beneath ancient soil. And so, when we speak of Homo Floresiensis, let us speak of their hands, their patience, their gift for shaping earth into extension, need into form, thought into function. As you drift, let your fingers imagine the edge of a stone tool. Let your breath slow to the rhythm of tapping flint. Let your mind quiet into that place where words end and knowing begins. For in the stillness of their cave, the hobbits spoke not with tongues, but with stone. And if we listen carefully, can still hear them. In the hush of a moonless night, deep within the embrace of the jungle, the cave of Liang Bua once came alive with a flickering glow. Firelight licked the stone walls, casting long shadows that danced and swayed with the breath of the flame. The warmth wrapped around the figures huddled near a tiny bot, wrapped perhaps in plant fiber or animal hide, their skin reflecting the red and amber hues of flickering embers. Fire, it is one of the most primal of human connections. It warms, it protects, it illuminates, and it remembers. To speak of fire is to speak of presence. For Homo Floresiensis, fire was not merely a talit, was a heartbeat, a silent companion through cold nights and howling storms. A barrier against the jaws of dragons, a center around which memory gathered. Archaeological layers within Liang Bua revealed traces of ancient hearths, dark smudges in the sediment, charcoal flakes, burnt bones scattered in patterns too deliberate to be accidental. These are not the scars of natural fire. They are signatures, footprints of moments when life held stillness long enough for warmth to matter. Imagine a small figure, no taller than your waist, crouched beside a modest blaze. The flame cracks softly, licking damp twigs and dried leaves. A skewer of roasted rodent turns slowly over the heat. The scent of cooked meat mingles with the musky breath of the cave and the sweet, decomposing perfume of jungle rain. Behind the fire, the shadows stretch. They move with a kind of rhythm, not chaotic, but like the slow turning of stars overhead. In this place, time does not march. It drifts. The fire is a clock made of embers. Its rise and fall marks the passing of thoughts, of hunger, of rest. For Homo Floresiensis, mastering fire was no small feat. To strike a spark in a damp world, to keep it burning through the torrents of tropical storms, required patience, memory, and technique. They may have used pyrite and flint, or perhaps borrowed flame from lightning-struck trees, cradling it like a sacred breath passed hand to hand. They would have learned which woods burned slow, which smoked too much, which snapped loud and which whispered low. Theirs was not a science of theories. It was a science of feeling, of listening to crackle and wind, of knowing the rhythm of flame. And flame, in turn, gave them life. It made the night less vast. It softened the silence. It gathered them into circles. In that circle, perhaps stories were shared not with words, but with gestures, mimicry, the slow weaving of eyes, meeting eyes and understanding. A mother feeds her child a cooked yam soft from the coals. An elder sharpens a blade, its edge catching the fire's gleam. A hunter returns with a kill, its steam rising into the smoke-swirled air. All of this lit, not by sun, but by a light born from stone and spark. In these scenes, we glimpse not just survival but intimacy. They may not have painted the walls. We have found no handprints, no pigments, no animal shapes etched into stone, but the fire painted for them. Each night, anew, it made the walls come alive. It gave the cave a voice. Perhaps they saw shapes in the dancing shadows, the silhouette of the outline of a serpent, the curve of a bird's wings. Perhaps they named these forms with their own sacred silence, giving identity to the flicker, to the movement, to the breath of flame. There is something sacred in imagining that moment. Firelight casting shapes that no longer exist onto stone that still does. The fire also protected. Beyond the mouth of the cave, dragons roamed. Komodo dragons, ancient and quiet, with tongues that flicked for scent, for fear, for the warmth of blood. But they would not enter the circle of fire. They would pause, hiss, and vanished back into the fern-thick dark. And so the fire became not only light and warmth, but boundary, a border between the known and the unknowable, between the world of Homo Floresiensis and the world of the unseen. Today the caves are still, but deep in the soil, the charcoal remains, blackened fragments of a world that glowed, traces of meals, scars of stories, hints of the hearts that once gathered there. Scientists analyze the carbon, they count the layers, they chart the residue. But beneath the numbers lies something deeper. A presence of the fire is gone, but its ghost remains. And that ghost glows softly in the imagination, if we let it. Imagine lying near the embers, the last warmth of the day, pulsing against your skin. The jungle hums outside. Insects drone like distant flutes. A figure beside you yawns, curls into a ball, exhales. The fire sputters, sighs, and fades. Sleep follows. And in sleep, dreams come not of cities or conquest, but of leaves, of smoke, of small feet moving through darkness with certainty. In that dream, the cave walls still flicker, the hobbits still gather, and somewhere, beyond the veil of time, the fire still burns. Above the caves, beyond the reach of torchlight and fossil, the canopy breathes. It is a world of shifting green or living ceiling woven from leaves, vines, and the dreams of birds. To step beneath it is to enter a realm where light becomes music, and movement becomes myth. Here, in the high forest of Flores, Homo Floresiensis, but among the towering roots of strangler figs, beneath palms that whisper to the wind, and across forest floors carpeted in moss and memory, we think of them often in relation to the cave, to stone, to bone. But the canopy was part of their world, perhaps even their beginning. It is here, beneath the green cathedral of trees, that the hobbits would have hunted, gathered, and wandered. The forest is not silent. It murmurs with life, the cries of long-tailed monkeys, the rustle of fruit bats taking wing at dusk, the slow groan of trees shifting in the wind, the sudden crack of a branch announcing the passage of something unseen. For Homo Floresiensis, this world was neither frightening nor chaotic. It was familiar. It held dangers. Yes, snakes curled in shadow, dragons sliding silently through ferns, but it also held fruit, water, roots, insects, life. They would have known every call of every bird, the tone that meant rain, the pitch that meant predator. They would have read the forest as we read books, every broken stem a message, every pile of droppings a map, every fallen feather a story. Imagine one of them now, a female, perhaps, bare feet pressing softly into the moist soil. She walks a narrow path, known only to her kind, a stick in hand, shaped not as a weapon but as a tool to dig or lift. Her eyes, dark and wide, scan the branches for motion. She stops, tilts her head, and listens. A fruit drops nearby. She moves quickly. She knows this land. She does not fear it. She is part of it, and the land, in turn, shapes her. Some scientists speculate that Homo Floresiensis may have spent considerable time in the trees. Their long arms, curved fingers, and flexible joints suggest an ease with climbing. Not like apes, swinging wildly, but like cautious children, moving with balance and calculation. Perhaps they slept in trees during warmer seasons. Perhaps they watched the stars through breaks in the canopy, tucked safely in the crook of a thick branch. In this elevated world, the dangers of the forest floor were held at bay. The dragons did not climb, the floods did not rise, and the view stretched for ridges of green rolling into blue, the sea always visible in the distance, like a promise. The canopy was not just shelter, it was perspective. Even now, those who walk the forests of Flores speak of presences, of the feeling of being followed, of glimpses, quick low figures darting behind tree trunks, sounds without source, echoes without cause. Of course, it may be imagination, a play of shadow and wind. But what if it is not? What if, in the folds of jungle untouched by machete or map, the descendants of those forest dwellers still move? Not many. Just enough. A handful. A memory given legs. The canopy is deep. It hides much. It held Homo Floresiensis for tens of thousands of years. Perhaps it has not let go. And even if their bones lie silent beneath the earth, the forest remembers their weight. The trees they climbed grow differently. The fruits they harvested still bloom. The stones they placed mark waterholes remain, moss covered and rounded by rain, but still there. In this way the canopy is their cathedral, its roots their roads, its birds their sentinels. And perhaps they are the forest's dream now, figures who once moved with gentleness and purpose, who left no ruins, but who shaped the land more subtly, more lastingly. We often define civilization by walls, by writing, by war. But what if civilization could be measured by harmony, by the ability to live among trees without breaking them, to move through a world without bruising it, to eat without conquest, to sleep without locks? Homo Floresiensis offers us this vision not of grandeur, but of grace. So tonight, let the canopy settle above you. Let its green hush fall over your thoughts. Let the rustling leaves become your lullaby. And as you close your eyes, Imagine how still there a small figure in the high branches, watching the stars through leaves, silent and sure, at peace in the dark. All islands begin with separation. Before there were shores and names and footprints in volcanic ash, there was only water, endless, luminous, ancient. The sea cradles and isolates, wraps itself around pieces of land and claims them as dreams adrift in blue. Flores, too, was shaped by this eternal embrace. It rose from the seafloor in slow violence, volcanic, trembling, alive, and once it stood above the tide, it stood alone. To the north, to the west, across treacherous channels and deep trenches, lay other lands, Java, Sulawesi, the vast mainland of Asia, but Flores remained apart, cradled by the sea's protection and mystery. It was this separation that sculpted the world Homo Floresiensis would one day inherit. We must pause here, by the shore. We must listen to the crash of ancient waves against coral cliffs, to the sigh of tides moving like breath between for it is here, at the meeting of land and sea, that their greatest mystery begins. How did they come to be here? Homo Floresiensis, by all accounts, is descended from an earlier hominin, perhaps Homo erectus, the upright walker who had spread across Africa and Asia nearly 2 million years ago. But Flores is not connected by land. It never has been. The Wallace Line, named after the naturalist Alfred Russel Wallace, marks a boundary in the archipelago where species diverge and isolation reigns. To cross that line is no accident. And yet, someone did, long before sails, long before compasses, long before maps and memory and myth. Someone crossed the water, a raft, perhaps made of bamboo, lashed with vines, or adrift across logs after a storm, guided not by stars, but by chance. Was it deliberate? Did they see land on the horizon and paddle toward it, hands blistered, eyes wide with the hunger of migration? Or was it unintentional, an accident of tide and timing? A group caught in the arms of the sea and deposited gently on a shore where none had ever walked before? We do not know, but we know they came. Over 800,000 years ago, tools appear on Flores, simple flakes, scrapers, hand axes, left by hands not yet small, not yet hobbit-like. These were ancestors, wonders, pioneers of breath. And from these ancestors, Homo Floresiensis, shaped by the island, shrinking, adapting, becoming. It was the sea that held them there. The same sea that allowed their arrival became the moat of their world. It kept the larger predators out. It kept the great migrations at bay. It gave them their own theater. And in that solitude, they authored a play like no other. Every island is a crucible, a distillation, a whisper of what the world might become if given enough time and silence. Flores became that whisper, and Homo Floresiensis was its voice. Their ocean was not empty. Dugongs glided beneath the waves. Giant sea turtles swam through coral arch. Fish in shimmering schools turned in unison beneath the sun. The hobbits may have fished, speared creatures in shallow lagoons, or collected shellfish along the rocky coves. Their diet may have been a dance between earth and sea, a harmony born of necessity. And they would have watched the water. They would have seen the storms come, black clouds rolling over the horizon. They would have smelled the saltic wind, tasted the warning in the air. They would have watched the tides with an intimacy we can only imagine, knowing when to cross, when to stay, when to hide. Perhaps in moments of stillness, they sat upon the rocks and looked outward, toward nothing, toward the horizon. Did they wonder what lay beyond? Did they remember their origins and story? Or was the ocean simply a border, unquestioned? Did they dream of crossing again? Or had the island become enough? In the hush of night, under a moonlit sky, the waves would have whispered. They still do. Each wave a breath from a time long gone, a pulse from the past. If you stand on the coast of Flores today and close your eyes, you might hear it. Not words, but rhythm. Not explanation, but presence. The sea does not forget. It remembers every crossing, every scream, every whisper, every arrival, every loss, and it holds the memory of Homo Floresiensis like a shell cupped in its vast blue hand. So tonight, as your breath slows and the darkness deepens, imagine the small figures upon the sand. Their feet press shallow marks into the wet shore. The tide reaches. The stars reflect in their eyes. They look outward, but they do not speak. They are content. They are held, and the ocean, vast and ancient, watches with them. There is a moment in all histories when the voices fall quiet. No more tools shaped. No more fires kindled. No more footprints pressed into soft volcanic earth. Just silence. Not the silence of peace, nor of sleep, but of absence. Of something that once was, and is no longer. So it is with Homo Floresiensis. They endured for ages, through tremors and storms, through the thunder of volcanic ash falling like gray snow upon the forests. They outlived species greater and louder than themselves. They adapted, quietly, deliberately. They persisted, and then, sometime around 50,000 years ago, the story faded. The tools ceased, the hearths go cold, the bones lie unburied in the cave floor, and in the stratified earth of Liangbua, the archaeologists dig and dig, and the hobbits are no longer there. Why? This question is not a demand, but a longing. We want to know not out of curiosity alone, but because the silence unsettles us. It is the kind of stillness that echoes. Did they vanish quickly or slowly? Did they die from hunger? Did the climate shift? Did the rivers dry or the animals flee? Did something come to the island that the hobbits could not endure? Some theories point to the arrival of another people, Homo sapiens. Us, modern humans, had already begun to spread through Southeast Asia by that time. They carried with them fire, language, and technologies far more complex. Spears tipped with stone and bone, nets ritual, perhaps belief. Did we meet the hobbits? Did we stand face to face with them in the jungles of Flores, taller, broader, and strange to their eyes? Did we fear them, or did we not even notice? Did we pass through their world too quickly, our footsteps drowning theirs? No one knows. There are no signs of violence, no massacres etched into the earth, no bones cracked by weaponry, no walls erected to mark defense. The hobbits disappear as gently as they lived. One theory suggests disease, a microbe born by our species, harmless to us, deadly to them. Another suggests competition. The hobbits, with their smaller brains and slower reproduction, may have simply lost in the long equation of survival. Or perhaps it was fate, an island's breath slowing, a river drying, a storm too long, a food source vanished. Perhaps they knew they were fading. Perhaps they gathered one last time around the fire, feeling something in the air they could not name. The cave remembers, but it does not tell. The layers above the last hobbit remains show signs of modern humans. Different tools, different ashes. The past replaced by another past, and yet it is not quite the same. The cave does not breathe the same way after. We often imagine extinction as loud, but often it is gentle, a silence stretched across generations. A child not born, a tool not remade, a fire not lit. And yet, absence is not erasure. Though their bodies vanished, though their language, if it existed, was never preserved, Homo Floresiensis left a mark deeper than any monument they lived. That is enough. They walked upright, they made fire, they watched the sky, they passed the torch of existence in their own way. And now, their story is held in the hands of others, of archaeologists brushing away dust, of scientists peering into skulls, of storytellers sitting by modern fires, dreaming of the past. In a world that races forward, we must pause for these silences. We must listen not just to the noise of discovery, but to the hush of what has been lost. It is here, in this quiet, that reverence is born. As you rest beneath the blankets of now, imagine the last of them, perhaps alone, perhaps not. A small figure beneath a tree, watching the sun set over the forest canopy. She feels the air shift. She does not run, she does not fear. She simply watches. She belongs, and in that belonging, she becomes eternal. The silence that followed was not empty. It was full of what had been. Let it cradle you now, for even in their vanishing, the hobbits left a presence so quiet, it still moves through the stones. There is something haunting about a skeleton. It is not death itself that we see in the curvature of ribs or the hollow sockets of a skull. It is memory, waiting to be remembered. Each bone, though silent, hums with the low vibration of a life once lived. Homo Floresiensis has given us few such relics, and yet each one is a symphony. The most complete specimen, LB1, lies in a glass case far from her native cave. Her bones carefully arranged, her skull the size of a grapefruit. She has been scanned, measured, reassembled digitally. But none of these processes can restore the echo of her step, the shape of her laughter, the rhythm of her breathing in the jungle night. Her bones are light, delicate, but they carry a weight no metal could hold. Anthropologists say her brain was only about 400 cubic centimeters less than a third the size of ours. And yet her people hunted, crafted, perhaps sang, survived. The mind within that small vault is unknowable, but its presence remains undeniable. Other fragments have been found too. Pieces of leg bones, a jaw with teeth worn by a life of chewing rough plants or fire-cooked meat, parts of a shoulder, a pelvis, a wrist. Each one adds a brushstroke to the fading portrait of a species. But more than that, they remind us of the fragility of memory. Flesh dissolves, language fades, structures crumble, but bone lingers. And even it is not immune to the pull of time. Some of the remains of Homo Floresiensis were so fragile that they began to decay the moment they were unearthed. Exposure to modern air, to oxygen, to bacteria, to the hunger of time awakenment, that even their final message, etched in calcium and structure, threatened to dissolve before we could listen. Scientists worked carefully. They froze the remains, preserved what they could, scanned what they must. But the process was not just medical, it was sacred. These were not relics. They were not curiosities. They were ancestors. Not of us, perhaps. Not of our direct line, but of our world, of our breath, of our capacity to wonder. For in every femur lies the memory of a step. In every finger bone, the whisper of touch. In every tooth, the echo of a meal long eaten, a fire long gone, a forest path long swallowed by root and vine. The bones of Homo Floresiensis speak a different language than ours. Their proportions are strange to modern eyes. Their wrists more primitive, their feet long and curved, almost simian, but not quite. They do not fit easily into any category. They are both familiar and foreign. They remind us of the shared origin of all things, of the great branching tree of hominin life, where paths diverge not once, but again and again, some toward greatness, others toward silence, some toward both. To study their remains is to be reminded of how much we do not know. They challenge the narrative of linear progress. They suggest a world in which evolution is not a staircase but a river dividing, reconnecting, disappearing into fog. And in that fog, the bones lie, waiting to be found, waiting to be held, not as evidence but as poetry. LB1's skull has been called many things deformed, remarkable, mysterious, but above all it is a face turned toward us from deep time. A face that does not ask to be understood, only remembered. And so, as you close your eyes tonight, imagine that skull not as a hollow thing, but as full of dreams, of forest scents, of the echo of fire on cave walls, of the feel of stone against skin, of voices that no longer rise. Let that image hold you, not as a mystery to be solved, but as a song almost forgotten, a tune made of bone and ash and breath, still lingering, still waiting, still singing softly through the corridors of time. Islands are strange places. They are cradles and prisons, sanctuaries and experiments. In the vast oceans of Earth, they rise like punctuation marks in the story of evolution. Flores is such a place. It did not just shelter Homo Flores, it shaped them. To understand the hobbits of Flores, one must understand what islands do. They do not offer abundance. They offer enough. No vast herds, no endless plains, no towering forests of prey, just patches, pockets, seasons, balance. And in this balance, size becomes a question. Why be large when food is scarce and speed is unnecessary? Why waste energy growing tall when everything one needs is within reach? On islands, creatures shrink. It is known as insular dwarfism, a pattern observed again and again. Mammoths become miniature, hippos dwindle, deer grow as small as dogs. And yes, even humans or something like humans may follow the island's slow sculpting hand. Homo Floresiensis may have begun as something larger, a migrant species, Homo erectus, perhaps drifting to Flores across currents and years. But the island spoke a different language, and in time, that language was written in the body. Smaller stature, lighter bones, slower metabolism, a form not of decline, but of adaptation. They did not fight the island. They listened, and in listening, they became something new. Even the tools they left behind reflect this transformation. Simpler, more efficient, suited for a body that did not seek power but precision. Their diet changed. Their movements grew measured. They shed what was no longer needed. The island was not kind. It was honest. Its volcanoes erupted. Its rivers flooded. Its skies turned dark with ash. The stegodons vanished. The great birds disappeared. But the hobbits endured, because they were sculpted to endure. They understood slowness. They understood scarcity. They did not build monuments, but they built belonging. The island also preserved them. Because of Flores's remoteness, Homo Floresiensis was spared the waves of migration and war that swept other lands. While empires rose and fell elsewhere, the hobbits continued and changed, unseen, untouched. For a time, but islands are not eternal. Their waters rise, their soil shifts, their balance teeters, and eventually the forces from beyond, whether human or climatic, find a way in. Even the islander, sculptor though it was, could not shield them forever. Yet what it gave remains, a record not of dominance, but of transformation, a species that shrank and simplified, and survived. Think of the island now, in your mind's eye. See it not as a landmass, but as a being, breathing, dreaming, patient. Its volcanoes are the heartbeats, its rivers are the veins, its canopy is the mind, and in its palm, it once held the hobbits carefully, quietly, and when they faded, it did not weep. It folded their memory into stone, into the shape of caves, into the tilt of branches, into the soil beneath your feet. Even now, when you walk the trails of Flores, the island whispers, not in words, but in wind through the bamboo, in the hush of fog sliding down volcanic slopes, in the stillness of a cave where something small once watched the stars. The island remembers, and the shape of Homo Floresiensis remains not just in bone, but in the slow breath of a place that once made something utterly rare. As you rest now, imagine yourself sculpted by silence, carved not in marble, but in rhythm. Not by chisel, but by time. Become the island, and let your dreams drift across its shores. There is something disarming about a species that left no writing behind, no glyphs etched on bone, no charcoal symbols on stone walls, no scrolls, no myths, no chants passed down in language we can decipher. And yet, their silence is not emptiness. Homo Floresiensis did not write as we do, but perhaps they spoke in ways older than language. Perhaps their hands conveyed meaning, perhaps a glance, a gesture. The hush of shared breath in the glow of firelight were their sentences. Perhaps they knew each other not through names, but through present. We want to give them words. We crave narrative. We long to hear what they called themselves, what names they gave the stegodon, the stars, the sea. But no such lexicon remains. So we listen in other ways, to the way their bones are positioned in the cave floor, to the repeated patterns of stone flakes and tools, to the charcoal spread around hearth, to the rhythm of their survival. These are their poems, and when we speak of them now, we must be careful not to confuse our voices for theirs. We may give them names LB1, the Hobbit Flores woman, but these are reflections, shadows on the cave wall. In their silence, there is a different kind of eloquence. They lived, they created, they endured. Is that not a form of speech? Perhaps language, in the way we define it, is only one thread in the great tapestry of communication. Perhaps the hobbits spoke with rhythm drum beats on hollow logs, the rustle of footsteps in dry leaves, the cadence of movement through forest paths. Perhaps they sang, not in notes or verses, but in repetition, in echo, in presence. Or perhaps the island itself was their language. They listened to the rivers rise and fall, and they knew when to move. They watched the sky darken with ash, and they knew when to wait. They heard the cries of storks and the hiss of dragons, and they knew what was near. These were not passive beings. They were tuned to the heartbeat of their world. And now, long after their voices have faded, the cave and forest still carry their breath. When the archaeologists first unearthed their remains, the silence was overwhelming. Not just the physical silence of bones, but the absence of narrative. No stories remained, no funerary objects, no artifacts of song or ceremony. But slowly a new kind of story emerged. Not written, but inferred. A femur broke in a Nilda, sign of care, of recovery. A meal shared around a fire, a sign of community. A tool repaired, a sign of memory. And suddenly, the silence speaks. Not in volume, but in clarity. We do not need words to know that these beings mattered. They matter still. The forest of Flores holds a hush unlike any other. If you walk its paths at dusk, as the cicadas fall into rhythm and the mist begins to rise from the jungle floor, there is a feeling that something is listening, not watching. Listening not for danger or prey, but for your pace, your presence, your breath. As if somewhere, hidden in the shadows, the hobbits still wander, quiet as wind. Perhaps their silence was not a lack, but a choice. Perhaps they knew the power of quiet. Perhaps they knew that words, once spoken, can disappear, but rhythm remains. The rhythm of walking, the rhythm of making, the rhythm of fire crackling in a darkened cave. And now we join that rhythm, even in sleep, even in story, even in silence. So tonight, let go of speech. Let your thoughts dissolve into breath. Let your heartbeat slow to the tempo of a distant drum echoing across a forest glade. Let the hobbits of Flores gather again, not to speak, but to share presence. You need no words to be with them. Only stillness, only time, only dreams. The land remembers where feet once fell, even when voices fade, even when firelight dims. The earth holds the memory of movement, the pressure of a heel, the widening arc of a turning step, the soft indentation left by toes curling in volcanic dust. These are not symbols carved in stone, but they are records, traces, ghosts of passage. Flores, ever volcanic, has known ash many times. From the sleeping calderas of the past rose mountains that erupted in fury and retreated into silence. The ash fell thick. It blanketed the forest floor. It painted the air in gray haze. And for a moment, time paused. But then, feet moved. Footprints of hominins have been found in similar lands in Africa, in the Near East, in the layers of time made soft by rain and hardened by sun. They are some of the oldest evidence of our ancestors' motion. And though we have not found the footprints of Homo Floresiensis yet, for their movement is written elsewhere, in their bones, in their wear patterns, in the subtle clues left in the caves. LB1's foot was long, with toes that curved gently, suggesting a unique way of walking partway between our stride and the gripping steps of primates. Not clumsy, not awkward, but different, suited for forest paths, for climbing perhaps, for adjusting to uneven ground with grace. So let us imagine it. The eruption has passed. The sky is gray. The leaves are still wet with ash. A single figure steps out from the cover of vines and trees. She is cautious, but not afraid. Her feet press into the cooling ash, making prints that will vanish with the next rain. She does not know that thousands of years from now, others will seek her story. She only knows the path. She follows the curve of the river, perhaps looking for food, perhaps for others. Her prints are small, light, intentional, then others follow. A child pressing a footprint inside the print of an elder. Another adult dragging a branch behind him, drawing a shallow line through the soft dust. This is movement, not rushed, not forced, but patterned, lived. The jungle, heavy with silence after the storm. These footprints are their story. They tell us that Homo Floresiensis was not confined to caves. They moved through valleys. They climbed hills. They navigated rivers and watched the coastlines where the waves whispered secrets. They made choices when to move, when to stay. They followed patterns that we can only guess at now. And like us, they must have danced, not in great circles or ceremonial fanfare, but in the simple sway of breath and joy. A child chasing a butterfly, a figure skipping across stones in a stream, the graceful curve of a hunt, the stillness before the leap. All of this is motion. All of this is life. Even today, in the ash fields of modern Flores, farmers sometimes find the faintest of lines on explained impressions in hardened sediment, shapes that seem to hint at toes, at strides too small for deer and too light for boar. They vanish when touched. They blur with the rain, but still, they appear. Perhaps it is imagination, or perhaps the land remembers better than we do. We often think of legacy in monuments, in structures, in inventions, but perhaps legacy lives in smaller places, in the shape of a path, in the bend of a branch long brushed aside by passing shoulders, in the way ash settles around an absence and reveals a form. Footprints remind us that presence is enough. One does not need to conquer to leave a mark. To walk is to claim the earth with every step. To move, even briefly, through the world is to echo. So as you rest now, feel your own body settling, your spine folding into the rhythm of the land, your breath sinking with the hush of unseen forests, and imagine your feet brushing the asher-soft earth of Flores, leaving behind only the suggestion of your passage, gentle, temporary, eternal. For even the lightest step is remembered, and even in dreams, we walk with those who came before. There are nights on Flores when the wind falls still, and the rain does not come, and the trees themselves seem to lean in closer to listen. In such moments, the island breathes in memory, not loudly, not with flourish, but softly, like a dream breathed from sleeping lips. And in that breath, there is fire, and there is rain, and there are the shadows of the hobbits. For Homo Floresiensis, fire was more than survival. It was vision. It lit their caves, cooked their food, kept the dragons away, but it also transformed their world. Fire changed roots into nourishment, turned stone black and bones brittle. Fire gave shape to their time. The flicker of flames was a rhythm they knew in their bones. Yet the island is not only fire, it is also rain. Heavy, warm, slow. It falls in sheets that wash away footprints, flood caves, nourish moss and silence. It is not a violent rain. It's patient, persistent. The kind of rain that wears down mountains over centuries and smooths the skin of stone. And so the hobbits lived between these two elements, fire and rain. In their fire, we see their intent. In their rain, we feel their erasure. Both are sacred. Perhaps on a night much like this one, they sat around the embers, listening to the patter of distant rain approaching. The youngest among them curled against the stone, already drifting toward sleep. The oldest watched the coals, eyes reflecting orange, heart reflecting history. The rain would come, and with it, the closing of another day. In this cycle, they found belonging. We know so little of their daily lives. We can only guess. But the clues are there. The placement of hearths, the shape of stone tools, the layers of ash in the cave, the bones of forest rats, charred and cracked. They hunted, they prepared, they ate together, they did not rush. Their world was smaller than ours, but it was no less full. Each day, they woke with the sun breaking through jungle mist. Each night, they closed their eyes as the rain tapped softly on leaves above, on stone below. And in that in-between they dreamed. Not as we dream, with words and visions and symbols, but in rhythms, in scent, in memory, in warmth. The dream was made of glowing embers and the hiss of whetstone, of the flicker of a small fire in a vast forest, of breath shared in closeness. They did not fear the dark, for in the dark was sleep, and sleep was safety. And the rain, when it came, washed the day clean and began again. We think of dreams as fantasies, but to the hobbits, dreaming may have been survival, a memory of the path back to the cave, an instinct carried from one night to the next, a song felt in the body, not sung aloud. So now, as you lie still, let the dream of fire and rain rise within you. Imagine the smell of wood smoke and damp leaves, the hush of dripping moss, the flicker of flame warming your hands. You are not alone. You are surrounded by presence. Not loud, not visible, but there. Like the hobbits, you dwell between fire and rain. And in this space, in this breath, you remember not only them, but something of yourself, something older than speech, something slower than thought, something as soft as ash and as constant as falling water. Sleep now, between the flicker and the drip. Let the fire fade. Let the rain fall, and let the dream hold you, as the island once held them. On islands like Flores, where the earth rises from the sea like an ancient thought, The line between the seen and the unseen grows thin. Shadows stretch longer, sounds carry farther, and in the hush at dusk, one begins to sense ... watchers. Not of the dangerous kind, not of menace, but of memory, of guardianship. In the world of Homo Floresiensis, every tree could have been a sentinel, every cave mouth a passage into deeper knowing, and the hobbits themselves, in their smallness and silence, became part of this natural guardianship, a quiet presence standing at the threshold of what came before and what was yet to be. They were never rulers, never builders of stone cities, but they were keepers, keepers of rhythms, of pathways trodden with purpose, of tools carefully shaped and of fires kindled again and again, until the ritual itself became sacred. And the Cavaliang Bua was more than shelter. It was a threshold. The temperature shifted as you stepped inside. Light bent. Voices fell to whispers, not from fear, but from reverence. In such places, the past and present speak more clearly. And the hobbits lived in the middle of that conversation. Perhaps this is why they feel like watchers even now. Their bones do not scream for recognition. Their story does not clamor for headlines. It waits, with the patience of stone and the wisdom of trees. Guardians are often unseen. They do not protect through walls or weapons. They protect through presence, through attention, through continuity. The hobbits did not stop time. They flowed within it. They watched seasons cycle. They watched ash fall and green return. They watched the sea breathe against the rocks, and they watched each other. There is no monument marking their final days, no cairn of stones, no inscription, only stillness. Yet perhaps that stillness is the greatest monument of all. In the quiet, in the slowness, in the absence of noise, we feel them. They guarded the threshold between one age and another, between the ancient hominins of Africa and Asia, and the modern humans who would soon carry language, art, empire, and ruin to every corner of the world. Homo Floresiensis stood quietly at that gateway, not blocking it, not resisting. Simply, we often think that history belongs to the loud, to the conquerors, to the builders of ziggurats and armies. But there is another kind of history, older, deeper, whispered. It belongs to those who listened, to those who watched the forest grow and recede, to those who knew when to wait and when to vanish. The hobbits remind us that presence can be profound, that survival itself can be sacred, that even the smallest figure in the quietest cave can be the keeper of time. And so tonight, as your breath slows, imagine them not as vanished, but as watching, not from above, not from beyond, but from within. The forest's hush is their voice. The rhythm of waves against the cliffs is their chant. The cool cave wind across your skin is their blessing. They are still here, guardians of the threshold, not asking to be known, only asking to be remembered. And in remembering, we become the next watcher, the next keeper, the next breath in the long silence of the world. Time, as we often measure it, moves in straight lines. Dates marked on calendars, timelines drawn in textbooks, events lined up like beads on a string, each one labeled, filed, understood. But in the world of Homo Floresiensis, time had a different shape. It was not straight. It was not linear. It circled like the moon. It flowed like water, pooled like rain in stone hollows. It was felt, not calculated. There were no clocks in their world, no months, no names for the days. But they knew time. They felt it in the warmth of the morning sun, in the shift of wind as seasons turned, in the ripening of fruit, the molting of birds, the slow fading of leaves, in the rhythm of firelight fading into ash. Time was lived, not counted. And in this way they understood something we have forgotten, that time is not always something to race against, but something to dwell within. Archaeologists, peering into layers of sediment, read the land's time like scripture. Each layer of ash, a passage. Each buried tool, a punctuation mark. Each fossil, a verse in a story written by hands long turned to dust. In Liang Bua, time is written in soil, layer upon layer of black, brown, red, and gray. Volcanic eruptions, floods, migrations, extinctions, and nestled between these lines, the tools, bones, and hearts of Homo Floresiensis. They appear, they persist, and then, slowly, they recede. Their entire era, perhaps spanning hundreds of thousands of years, compressed into a few meters of dirt and stone. To us it seems small, but to them it was everything. We measure our lives in minutes. They measured theirs in mornings. We race the clock. They watch the shadows move. There is a lesson in that. To live in forgotten time is to slow down, to return to breath, to fire, to the turning of stars. Perhaps, to Homo Floresiensis, the world was a song, and each day was a note. Some notes high, some low, some held longer than others. No need to write it down. It was remembered in the body, in movement, in rhythm. And when the song ended, it did not stop. It faded into silence, into soil, into shadow, not loudly, not in the roar of civilization, but in the soft footstep on forest floor, in the hush of cave wind, in the long stillness before rain. This is the shape of forgotten time, not a road, but a circle, not a chart, but a breath. And in that breath, the hobbits are still with us. So now, let go of ours, let go of names, let go of progress, drift into the older rhythm, the rhythm of forgotten time, where every moment is whole, where sleep is sacred, where the past is not behind us, but within us. You are not late, you are not Earth, you are here, and the time is now. And it has always been. In the vast museum of Earth's memory, some lives rise like towers, empires with flags, kings with swords, cities that sparkled and fell. But scattered between these giants are the lives of the small, quiet beings, subtle presences, echoes rather than trumpets. Homo Floresiensis belongs to these spirits of smallness. We are often taught to look upward, to revere size, to respect that which takes up space. But the hobbits of Flores remind us that meaning does not require magnitude, that presence does not demand height, that smallness is not weakness. It is closeness, it is listening, it is knowing what large cannot feel. A Homo Floresiensis adult stood about 1 meter tall, the height of a child in our world. Yet they hunted, they crafted, they survived for thousands upon thousands of years. They were not diminished. They were precise. Perhaps their smallness allowed them to slip through the jungle unnoticed, to pass through the underbrush like wind, to reach fruit on low branches without struggle, to live lightly, leaving only footprints and faint embers in their wake. We might imagine a figure crouched in the cool of a fern-shrouded glade, eyes alert, breath quiet. She does not disturb the forest. The birds do not fly from her presence. She is part of the world, not pressing against it. This is the power of smallness. In many traditions, the forest spirits are tiny, tucked behind leaves, peeking from beneath stones, invisible to those who do not slow down. Is it so strange to think that Homo Floresiensis became the source of these stories? The Ebu Gogo, whispered of by Flores villagers, was said to be small, fast, clever, and hard to catch. Always close, always watching. The islanders told tales of them long before bones were ever found. And when the scientists arrived, the elders simply nodded. "We told you," they said. "We remembered." Memory does not always need evidence. Sometimes it lingers in the shape of stories, in the way one avoids a certain cave, or leaves food near a stone outcrop, not in superstition, but in respect. To remember the small is an act of reverence. In our world, fast and loud, the small are often overlooked. But in the quiet, they reign. Mushrooms bloom in the dark. Moss creeps across ancient walls. Insects build empires beneath our feet. And once, on Flores, the hobbits walked in soft procession through the forest, unseen by all but the earth itself. They lived with the dragons, the birds, the trees, not above them. And though they left no walls or statues, they left balance. That may be the greatest monument of all. Tonight, as you lie still beneath your blanket, become small, not in power, but in presence. Feel your body shrinking into the hush. Feel the weight of the day lifting. Let your breath grow shallow and slow. Let your spirit soften. You do not need to be grand to be sacred. You do not need to be known to be eternal. You only need to be just as they were. So sleep now, as the hobbits did under stars hidden by canopy, beside the coals of a dying fire, held by the arms of a patient island. Let their smallness protect you. Let it guide you into dream. Not all stories end with thunder. Some stories conclude with a breath, barely noticed, a shadow fading into mist, a ripple lost in the stillness of a jungle pond. Such is the vanishing of Homo Floresiensis. We do not know the hour of their end. No final battle was fought. No famine carved desperation into their bones. No monument mourned their passing. They simply were no more. One day they walked the forest paths. The next, the paths grew cold, and the island, which had once shaped them, now held only their silence. There is a sacredness in such endings. Not every departure must be announced. Not every loss must be dramatic. Sometimes, the most profound stories slip quietly into the folds of time. Perhaps their last days were no different than their first. A morning spent gathering roots, a fire lit in the hush of a wet afternoon, a child playing with a shell, tracing circles in the dirt. They may not have known they were the last. They may have gone to sleep with dreams in their heads and vanished between breaths. And yet, for all their silence, we cannot forget them, because their disappearance speaks just as loudly as their life. It reminds us of what is fragile, of what can be lost even without violence, of how thin the thread of memory truly is. 50,000 years ago may seem distant, but in the age of the earth, it is nothing, a whisper, a blink. And we, the ones who discovered their remains, are just as transient. We, too, will vanish. But in between that vanishing, we have a chance to remember, to hold the story of Homo Floresiensis not as an oddity, but as a kindred truth. A truth that life can take many forms. That meaning can be made in quietness, that a species need not dominate to matter. When their bones were first lifted from the soil, cradled in latex gloves beneath surgical lights, the world trembled. Who were they? Why had we never known of them? How could we, the great chroniclers of our own kind, have forgotten an entire branch of our family tree? But perhaps they were never lost, only waiting for the right stillness, the right silence, the right listener. And now, as the night folds around you, as your limbs grow heavy and your thoughts stretch into shadow, you are that listener. You carry their presence, not just in thought, but in spirit. They are part of you now, not as mystery, but as memory. Sleep knowing that once, on an island cradled by the sea, a people lived simply, quietly, beautifully. And when they left no sorrow, only space. And in that space, we find stillness. And in that stillness, we find them. Long after the last ember has faded from the hearth, long after the final footprint has been swallowed by the forest floor, the island of Flores still remembers, not as we do with photographs or pages or carved words, but with breath. With rain, with root, with stone, the very air of Flores carries something of them. Of the hobbits who once dwelled beneath the jungle's green breath, who watched the stars through gaps in the canopy, who shaped stone with care and walked paths known only to time. They are not a myth, they are not a metaphor. And the island, in its quiet wisdom, has kept their memories safe. The caves still breathe. The birds still call. The rivers still run over the bones of forgotten days. And every now and then, when the wind shifts just so, and the sunlight slants across the cave mouth at the right angle, it feels as though the veil between now and then grows thin. As though the hobbits have only just stepped out of view, into the fern-thick dark beyond the bend in the path, into the hush between rain and thunder. We do not need to see them to know they were here. We feel them in the patience of the trees. We sense them in the rhythm of waves against the cliffside. We hear them in the rustle of something small passing just beyond our reach. And perhaps they are still watching, not from above, but from within the island itself, from within the memory of the world. Flores does not forget. It carries their shape in its caves. It whispers their story through the roots of banyan trees. It folds their name into the call of owls and the slow tumble of vines down ancient rock. Homo Floresiensis, not truly because we remember, because we listen, because we dream. And in our dreams, they walk beside us, quiet, present, eternal. So let this chapter close not with an ending, but with an opening, a door into stillness, a path into presence, a light flickering low in the mouth of a cave, waiting to be tended again. For as long as there are those who pause, who wonder, who breathe with the forest instead of over it, the hobbits will never vanish. They remain in the hush, in the moss, in the dream. And now, dear dreamer, our fire dims. The forest grows quiet. The cave breathes low once more. You have journeyed through the hush of time, beside shadows that once walked, beside ancestors whose names we'll never know, but whose presence still echoes in the bones of the earth. You have walked the jungle paths of Flores, felt the ash beneath your feet, watched the stars rise above the canopy, as the hobbits once did, quiet wondering. Still, Homo Floresiensis has returned tonight, not in flesh, but in memory, in breath, in the gentleness of your sleep. If this journey has stirred something ancient within you, if these echoes of forgotten beings have touched your stillness, then let your presence be known softly with a gentle like, with a quiet subscription. Not to join a channel, but to join a circle, a gathering of dreamers who listen to the past, not for answers, but for belonging. Across oceans, across time zones, scattered like stars, but connected by the rhythm of history's whispers. So tell us, fellow dreamer, from where do you drift into this night's story? From which quiet corner of the earth have you joined this ancient silence? Let us know in the comments below, not as a shout into the void, but as a signal, a candle lit in the cave of memory. And as your breathing slows, as your body sinks into the warm dark of rest, know this: the past is never truly past. It lives in us, in wonder, in questions, in reverence. Tonight the hobbits of Flores walked once more, and you walked with them. Sleep now, softly, deeply, held by the rhythm of the island that remembers. Until next time, beneath new stars, in another forgotten place. Good night from the dreaming historian.